Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to be going over the rubric for speech number 2, which is coming up. This is for social media star. This is the same rubric that I used for your impromptu speeches, and so hopefully by now you have had some time to go and look at those comments that I made on your rubrics from your impromptu speeches. And so I just wanted to kind of go through the rubric and give you some kind of tips and tricks and kind of like this is why this is kind of thing for this upcoming speech, so you have a good idea going into it how to prepare. So you'll notice that these a lot of these criteria are the exact same criteria that you're using in your TED Talk analyses that you're doing on those speakers from TED Talk. And so this actually will help you, this video will help you kind of understand those criteria a little bit better. Hopefully that's the intent. So eye contact is one of those things that is really hard to kind of get right until you're actually doing it in a real life situation. We're kind of in a simulated situation here where you're giving a speech to a camera and in the simulating giving it to a crowd in a regular classroom, and so that's kind of taken a lot of the immediacy kind of out of the speech, whole speech giving. But eye contact is hard. It's something that kind of increases with confidence. It's something that is it's hard to focus your attention on when you're talking to a camera. So I kind of wanted to give you some tips about how to do that. Eye contact, remember from our lecture, is a great way to express confidence. It's a great way to express your credibility as a speaker, and it's also a great way for you to develop that audience contact, which is so important in speech giving, in successful speech giving. So with your eye contact, number one thing that will really help is that if you get your camera stationary in a fixed place in your room, wherever you're giving your speeches, have it up a little higher so you're not having to look up or down into the camera, and have it directly facing, you be directly facing your camera, not sitting at an angle where you're having to look to the side. And then kind of focus your attention just slightly above where the camera is, and that'll help twofold. The first thing is it actually appears that you're looking out into an audience and not directly at a camera. It's very obvious when you're looking directly at a camera when you're recording something. Second thing is that it'll help you avoid any issues with your fluency, because a lot of times you'll catch yourself looking at yourself, and that can be very distracting for you as the speech giver. So that's some ways that you can help improve that. And again, the more confidence you get, the better and better that is going to get. Your posture is so important. By now in our lecture series, you've noticed that what you're, it's not just what you say, it's also what your body and your body language and your facial features, what it says as well, that kind of build that whole, that speech, the overall speech impact. So your posture, you want to be upright. You don't want to be sitting in a bed or sitting in a chair where you have a tendency to slump. If you're sitting more upright with your back a little bit more upright, or standing, which is what I would recommend, because that really does help simulate the situation that you would be in if you were giving a speech in a class. And so this class is kind of like a stepping stone, because there are a lot of concentration focused classes that are going to ask you to give a presentation in front of your peers. And so you might as well go ahead and get the whole package working for you. So maintaining an upright posture will convey your confidence. It will also help you with your eye contact and any unnecessary or distracting movement and over gesturing, that kind of thing. So looking directly, facing directly towards the camera, just maintain an upright, not too rigid. You don't want to appear too stiff, or we're human, so we naturally have movement to our body. We're not stiff like a robot. So just upright, nice straight back, head up, chin up, looking, facing directly at the camera. Something that I tell my kids in person a lot that I do to kind of help me is kind of leaving my hands kind of loosely, kind of loosely making an O, like around my waist area, with my fingertips touching. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then that kind of helps me maintain a nice straight back with my head and neck up. Moving on to movement and physical gestures, movement can get very distracting. I noticed in several of your speeches, you're swiveling in a chair, or you're playing with your hair, touching your face. You touch your face hundreds of times a day without even really thinking about it. So it's natural that you would reach up and touch it, like when you're doing your speeches. But remember from our lecture series that everything that you're doing with your body, your face, your gesturing, can send a message. And sometimes that message is not, scratching your head or adjusting your clothes, or, scratching your body, or those kinds of things. They can send messages that we don't intend to send. In addition to that, too much movement, too many gestures can also get very distracting, and your audience will find themselves watching your movement instead of focusing on your content, which is definitely, it's not something that you want to happen. So that's why I keep my fingertips touching. That way I can be free to gesture if I want to emphasize something, like on a slideshow, to my audience, if I want to articulate a point. But it also kind of helps keep me grounded. There's something about that contact that you're making with your fingertips that kind of helps you feel grounded and sure of yourself. I know that sounds very strange. It's just something you'll kind of have to put into practice so you can see what I mean. But it feels like your hands are doing something, and they're not technically doing anything. They're just kind of helping keep you centered and kind of grounded. You always want to think about motivated movement, motivated gestures, instead of excessive and over gesturing. Your vocal variety, those are all the things that go into the quality of our voice, our emphasis, how loud or how soft we speak, and then the words themselves that we choose. So this is a formal occasion. You want to maintain your most formal voice every time you give a speech. You want to avoid slang words. You want to avoid contractions, generic terms like stuff and things. You just maintain that professional sounding, formal voice. You can still be yourself and not lose any of your qualities that make you you, while maintaining a formal voice. There's ways to do that. So you want to think about those things. Your projection is your volume. How you would sound in a room, which is the simulation of what we're doing in this class. Yes, you're sitting and talking to a camera, but if you have a naturally soft voice, then you naturally would be difficult to hear in a larger room that may be full of people. So you want to work on your projection. You want to work, if you're too loud, you want to work on that volume level so that you can get that just right for a good volume for your speeches. Fluent delivery, this is one a lot of people struggle with. There are all kinds of things that you can have as a miscue. Words like and itself, and then you have your uhs and your ums and those kinds of things as well. But pauses themselves can kind of throw us off as well. Sometimes we take a pause to kind of recenter ourselves, or kind of collect ourselves, and then the pause continues to lengthen on, and then we find it harder to get back started. That's because our brain kind of goes into sleep mode for just a second. They're like, oh, we're done speaking, so let's kind of rest for a moment. It can be hard to do that. I'm not saying that you want to rush through, because speed is also a factor. When you get too fast, when you're being timed, sometimes that makes us feel rushed and we're rushing through, and that can also be an issue as well, because then we don't articulate our words as clearly as we should. It makes it very difficult for people to understand us. So it's all about intelligibility, under how well we're understood, and then it's okay to take those small tiny pauses to kind of take a breath. But avoid those long pauses and watch those miscues. If you will mark down the number of times that you use something like or a lot of times it'll draw your attention to it, and you'll avoid it in the future because your brain is now aware that you're doing it. Because sometimes that's kind of like something that we don't even really realize that we're doing. Energy and enthusiasm. This is a hard area to kind of like explain, but your natural enthusiasm, your natural energy, you don't sound like you just got out of bed and you're just having to do this because it's a grade kind of thing. But you also want to avoid being too energetic, especially when you're talking about a super serious topic. Like some of the ones that we have coming down the line are a lot more serious, and so sounding overly excited and happy when you're talking about something like texting and driving and drunk driving and things like that. That's, you gotta have an appropriate level, but you do want to maintain a consistent energy and enthusiasm throughout. Your focus and concentration, really comes from preparation. When you're prepared, that area, it kind of centers itself. You feel more prepared. Your concentration, your focus is kind of lasered into what you're doing. For your impromptu speech, you had no idea what I was going to ask you, so you didn't have time to kind of think about that. And so for a lot of people, that area was kind of a struggle, which is why I didn't, I give you 50 points just for attempting that speech, and then point out those areas later. But being prepared is the number one way to help with focus and concentration. Limiting distractions, doing your speeches in a room where you're not likely to encounter a lot of distractions, like people coming in and out, animals coming in and out, that kind of thing. Introduction and conclusion. A lot of you did really great with the introduction. Hi, my name is so-and-so, and today I'm going to be talking about this. But then your conclusion, you just kind of drop it off with, at the end, you clip it off. Sometimes you wouldn't even, you'd be like, and yeah, the end, kind of thing. So a good way to kind of always think about a conclusion is bringing everything back full circle. So restating your prompt, and that is why, if I could have any superpower, it would definitely be flying. That kind of thing kind of brings it back full circle. I had the hiccups, I'm sorry. And provides closure for your listener. Time limit. This is something that, putting a time limit on anything kind of skews a lot of the other areas, because you're like, if you're watching the clock, that can get distracting. You feel like you got a lot to say. You're trying to rush. Maybe you don't feel like you have enough to say, so you're trying to stretch it out. So you're going to start repeating yourself. But you want to be mindful of a time limit. If you ever have to give a formal presentation and the person who asked you to speak says, okay, you have like 15 minutes, you cannot go over that. Being mindful of the time is something that is important. If somebody tells you to speak for a minute, then you need to think about that in terms of like, that's the hard limit, that I need to make it to a minute. But if you run out of things to say and you're starting to repeat yourself, that's when you need to kind of like bring it to a close, so that you don't get like to ramble. You're not prone to ramble or chase a rabbit. So just being mindful of that thing. All those things together, I have on a scale of 5 being excellent, you're doing a great job. 0, obviously, is definitely something that needs improvement, or I'm not witnessing it. And this rubric will change as we kind of go along in our speeches. I'll throw in new content, but you'll always have that ahead of time so that you can prepare yourself for that rating and for that grading.